Nau mai, haere mai, and welcome to this webinar on social sector data. I'm Duane Wilkins. I'm a Senior Advisor, Geospatial Capability Building, and I'm here with Sam Keast from the Ministry of Social Development, and Sam is a Senior GIS Analyst. And how long have we known each other, Sam? A decade or so we've known each other?
Yeah, close to.
Very close, maybe more. So very happy to have Sam here with us today. We're going to be talking about social sector GIS data, having a bit of an exploration. So I'm just going to share my screen just to kick us off. So for those of you who are wondering what were we going to talk about again, social sectors, social services sector, finding and using New Zealand's popular GIS data layers. And this is part of the GIS NZ GeoByte series. So we're going to have a look through some data from a variety of sources. Some may be slightly different than advertised, but that's all good. These are better ones. So Sam has provided us with some links. So let's have a look at those as well. So if you would like to follow along as we go, there is a very easy short URL you can access there called hae.re/social. It'll bring you up to this Google Doc, and you can follow us along as well. So, shall we rip into it, Sam?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you want to, I'm going to stop sharing and you share your screen. And
sure, let's get up and running.
And also we're recording this session because we will make it available for accessing afterwards as well. If you have any questions, feel free to just put them in the chat, and I will grab them and bring them to Sam's attention, or just reply in the chat as well.
Cool. Can everybody see what we're seeing here?
Yep,
awesome.
We're good to go.
So I guess a lot of this will come out of my own personal experiences with social sector data. So it'll be biased in the most lovely way possible. And I find that time and time again, a lot of what we deal with in the social services sector space comes down to Statistics New Zealand geographies. And this datafinder.stats.gov.nz is where you can come in and find all of the GIS data that Stats NZ pulled together. And so this, if you're familiar with the coordinates platform, this is based off that and allows you to go through and see a whole bunch of the annual boundaries that Statistics New Zealand release, I think on a yearly basis now, or have been since 2016.
That's pretty cool. I hadn't seen them out all organised like that before.
Yeah. So what we can see through here is different types of geographies that they release. And by and large, a lot of what I find I deal with is this sort of mesh block, territorial authority, and the statistical area to generalized data set tend to be. What I find them useful for is to then link other social services sector data to, and it gives the tabular information a GIS location to live in.
Sam, do you use the ones with, I know to me there are clipped versions which are clipped to the coast. Do you use those predominantly, or do you use the ones that are, I know they go out to
the 12 nautical mile line, I think, right? I find that I often use the clipped ones, with the underlying assumption being that most people don't live in the sea and therefore aren't likely to exist in the other slightly more offshore areas. However, I have found that if I'm doing what I call a concordance table, so one particular type of boundary to like best fit into a statistical area, they'll find that I'm using the full data set there just in case there's bits and pieces that don't quite overlap as well as they could do.
Cool.
So generally speaking, the generalized one, clip to the coast. If I'm being extra serious about it, then I'll use the full one.
Yeah. Cool, man.
So in a nutshell, that's kind of the data finder section here.
I guess the other question I had around, for me, starting out in GIS and mesh blocks and area units, I still keep coming back to, I know they call them statistical area 1 and 2 now, but I've still got a back of my head, still translate. 1 is the smaller one and 2 is the area equivalent.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely that. So they still share the same mesh block heritage, and then the statistical area 1 is that in-between space between what we used to know as the area unit and mesh block.
Yep.
And the statistical area 2 is sort of that like equivalent of an area unit. There is a lovely diagram on Statistics New Zealand website somewhere that shows the hierarchy of how all of these areas fit together. And that includes stuff like the urban-rural data set, which is a nice split to show you where those concentrated urban areas are as well.
Can you have a look on that higher geographies one just there? Just
this one here.
I'm just assuming what that means is it's got everything from a statistical area 1 and above it. So it's going to give you the most, right in assuming it's going to tell you the name of the SA1, the SA2 that it sits within, and then if we had SA3, for example, but that would be a district council or a city council.
The urban rural thing in here.
Urban and rural. Yeah.
And into the urban area, I think. And then TLA and regional council as well. So it's quite comprehensive.
Pretty handy when you're doing, oh, cool. Thanks, Anne. Anne's put the link to the geographic hierarchy in there for us as well. It's all right. It's just in the chat.
Easy.
All good. Carry on, mate. Carry on.
Cool. Well, without any further ado, let's switch on to the next link that I had in mind, which is this NZ.stat one. And this is still keeping in theme with Statistics New Zealand's information. This is where I would go to try and find census-related information. The benefit of the New Zealand.stat website is that it contains a whole bunch of not just necessarily the census information, but all sorts of other weird and wonderful things in there too. And the information that provided out of this is all tabular generated, but some of the tables in here will link to the geographies that we've just shown you. And so by doing a couple of table joins, you can present the information that's found in this website spatially and win friends along the way. So out of this one here, I do spend quite a bit of time in, funny enough, in the 2013 census for population, I think. A lot of the work I've been doing recently has been in the Māori space. And unfortunately, the 2018 census data for Māori is quite incomplete. But this does have, what do we got in here? What I'm doing is trying to keep my eye out for a table that's specifically referencing area units and or something equivalent to like statistical area. So for example, this one here, you can see that it's got RC, TA, SA2, THB. That stands for the regional council, the territorial authority, the statistical area 2, and the district health board.
Can you click on that one, Sam? Does it show?
Absolutely. And this is
Yes, this
what
is
you'll
the
end up with.
interface we know and love.
So it does take a bit of getting used to, but what you can do is click on any of these little arrows or in customizing, and that will bring up a little table that allows you to customize, right, well, what exactly is it that I want to pull out of this table? So maybe just people under the age of 15. If I come across to the area tab here, slow.
Takes some time. All good. I remember I was using this in the COVID-19 when we were in lockdown 4. The census data had just come out. There's a key thing here. The key thing for me is the chat with us now. That helped me keep my sanity. There was a very helpful person on the other end from stats that could step me through what I was trying to do, because I was coming up against issues of too many records. I was trying to download millions of data points all at the time. And I think there are limits of, like, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 million data points, each cell. And I remember it was a little tricky to figure out how to get it to pull through in the right format. So that chat with us now was a real lifesaver in terms of support. So kudos to Stats, I reckon, for putting that there, because not many government agencies have got that kind of support.
Absolutely. And yeah, there definitely is a small learning curve in being able to figure out how this works. But for example, at the moment, I've unticked everything and I'm only showing stuff for the northern region. So if I view the data for that, it will literally just be a single line.
Yeah.
But if I was trying to pull out a list of all the SA2s within the northern region, there is a function in here that's the select level and select level within node.
Yeah.
And one of these, I'm going to hazard a guess at select level, hope for the best.
I think that'll select all the other regions, just like Northern.
Whereas the select level within node, because I have one of these highlighted, should have done the job.
Yeah. So then you get this table out. You then do a join to the equivalent data set from Data Finder. And I think there's some basic census data in the Data Finder, so you don't have to do this one right off the bat. But if once you get beyond the basics of the census data, this is where you can get into much more detailed extraction.
Absolutely. And I think the stuff in Data Finder is only the census information. So all of these other categories in there, you likely won't find in the Data Finder, at least not for a while. So yeah, and from here, literally export out whatever you've designed as a table as a CSV file. One tip will be that whatever you export out as a CSV file will have a whole bunch of these like extra headers, etc. So you will need to reformat the output table in order for it to be a flat file that a GIS system can read.
Yeah. There's a question here from Mohammed. How did you manage to download large data sets? So I think that one's for me. Very carefully is the answer. Trial and error. Basically, not being so greedy and thinking I could just download everything all at once. I had to just select out, particularly when I was looking at mesh block data, I had to just select one or two, or limit the number of columns that I was trying to export. So there's no magical answer there, and it can be frustrating. But once I figured out, hey, I was actually asking for a lot of data, then I just had to sort of temper the type of queries I was putting to it.
Yeah, I think a filter would be your friend in that kind of situation. Just remove the stuff that you're not interested in, keep only the things you are. And it just creates a lot less pressure on the servers that they've got.
And another question here from John. Maybe we can come back to that one, John, about IDI. I've got some thoughts on that one in relation to a recent project, but yeah, we'll come back to that one at the end if we could, John.
Good idea. Cool. Well, we'll crack on to the next in our lovely list, which is something, I guess, slightly closer to home for me. And this is embarrassing more than anything else. So this is the Ministry of Social Development's Publications Centre. And this is where you would go if you're interested in, I guess, the welfare system and how that's performing across the country. There are some sort of pre-packaged information data sets, for example, benefits data sheets, benefit fact sheets are quite a good source. And these come with tables both at a national level, which for GIS practitioners perhaps less useful, with the stuff down at the regional councils, territorial authorities, Auckland boards.
Oh, can we have a look at one of those?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's pull this up. I think I might need to reshare the screen to pull that.
Yeah, we're still looking at the benefit sheet. Just if you just maybe stop sharing and then.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Oh no, it's still.
Just taking its time to open. Here we go. Let's see. A new share. Cool. Hello. This is the output you might get from that. This is as of December 2020. It's got some lovely explanatory notes about what we mean. And then inside are these summary tables, both by numbers and percentage of different types of benefits by each district. So you could build quite a cool data set out of some of this stuff, which I guess is what I do on a daily basis. So yeah.
So that client type one there, Sam, if people wanted to join that, say to a TA data set within what they're going to need to do is to flat file it by creating a. Do you have any tips on the easiest way to do that, or is it just a matter of picking out what they need?
No special tips. I'd be, for example, in a table like this, it has a whole bunch of different things like this gender and ethnic group and age. So I'd probably create a new sheet like so, and then pick out the section I'm actually interested in.
And then just maybe create some kind of
coded
column heading of some kind.
Yeah.
Okay.
After a while, you get quite good at the Excel shortcuts. So for those who are less savvy, I was doing a Control-Shift down to select everything from that selected record to the extent of the data. Yeah, you can learn lots of wonderful shortcuts in Excel that will speed things up for you.
Oh, and for those of you who haven't seen our Macron webinar, there's a really simple trick to retain macrons. For example, the long A in Māori is when you have processed it and you go file save as to a CSV, you want to go file save as to a CSV, but of a type UTF-8, and that will retain those macronated characters in there. Yeah.
If you pick this one down here, you won't keep those.
No, you'll end up with question marks and other random things. So the difference is the standard and the number of characters that are stored in that character type.
Yep. Yeah. Cool. I think you still have a recording of the Macrons webinar up online as well.
Yep, that'll be on Grow GIS, and if it's not already, I think it is on the LINZ YouTube channel as well.
How good. YouTube
it takes us a while to get the captions done. They're a bit laborious, so we're still just getting the routine of getting the captions done, getting it uploaded, and then letting everybody know it's there. So I think that last step I've still got to do. But if you look on the Grow GIS website, you should be able to find it there. Sorry, Grow GIS page on Facebook. Oh, this one's cool. I had never heard of this one before lockdown 4, level 4, and it's amazing. It's huge.
Pretty phenomenal data set. Yeah. So for those who are new to this, which I imagine will be a lot of you, reasonably well hidden for some reason, this is a list of most service providers within New Zealand that deal with the family services type category. So to give you a flavour of what's kind of included in here, it's sort of addiction, basic needs, budgeting, family violence, legal services. There's a whole bunch of really cool things in here. Now, at a front end of this, should look for something that's addiction related. This is the type of information you get out of here specifically. You can select records and then view them on a map, like so. So I can kind of see where these 3 providers are around here. And one of them is a call line, helpline, so it doesn't get represented. But what you can do in here also is to download the actual providers. They have somewhat annoyingly split them up into regions. All the files aren't particularly big, but if you were to download each of these files, you'll have a very comprehensive list, including latitude and longitude for all of the addresses that are geocoded in there.
Do you know what I think as well? You can get on data.gov, where someone from DIA shared it with me, is I think there's like a CSV of the whole thing in one file.
I think so. We are going to, I think, explore data.gov later on, so we might have a sweet callback to that.
Hey, can I snatch your screen for a moment and just show you what we did with that data set in the Caring for Communities COVID thing, because that was a really well-used data set. If I just share. So this is just an example of taking that data from data.gov, and then sort of afterwards discovering that source, but I'd never heard of it before. So we were looking for things like this for level 4 lockdown, and if I just pick on Lower Hutt, so you can, using a dashboard, using that same data set with no additional processing, you can set up these kind of filter type interactive things. So basically replicating what is on that Google map, but in a way that you can tie it in with other services as well. Like in this map, we've got deprivation and other things as well. But that was I remember that was a hugely popular data set. This is quite dated now because you can see this is April last year. But that was a massive data set when I discovered it. I was very impressed.
Yeah.
I'll stop my sharing now and swap back to you, Matt.
Cool. I think the majority of the data in there is provided by the organisations who are represented in there. So it might not necessarily be 100% complete, but pretty damn close, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've seen a lovely example of how it could be used. So feel free to do your own work with this as well. It is associated with the Ministry of Social Development as well, which is, I guess, how I found out about it. Cool. Next up, New Zealand Police. So police have this lovely website here, which I guess follows a similar kind of information presentation as New Zealand.stat, that we showed you earlier, where you can pull out different types of tables, build a report, download that information, and then join it onto Statistics New Zealand geographies. So this is the Victimization Demographics dataset.
Oh, can you're
Am I sharing screen?
just
No.
share your screen there, Sam?
My bad.
Maybe. Okay, cool.
Here we go. This is the victimization dataset I was talking about. And through here, you can see like a lovely dashboard of the, I guess, this particular time period. We can filter out by particular location of the burglary only. But yeah, through here, you can hit a download section and download something specific to the victimization dataset. It's all run through Tableau, if you're familiar with that. And download button is down here. It can be reasonably well hidden. They have got a nice little run through of how to actually download the dataset there. And for us GIS practitioners, that boundary field will be the key for us to join back to Statistics New Zealand geographies. It's quite neat in here. I don't spend too much time with this one, so it's not as familiar to me as some of the others, but when I need it, it's pretty handy. Cool. Any questions about that one? Insights from you, Duane?
No, it looks pretty good. I haven't fiddled with this data myself, but it's pretty neat that they're putting that stuff out there.
Absolutely.
I know there's places like figure.nz scrape a lot of this kind of data and do some very interesting visualizations with it.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, the next one on our list is a government agency we're all deeply familiar with by now. This is Ministry of Health's website. Some health, two particular sections on this website that as a GIS practitioner I would be interested in. This one is the locations of healthcare providers that deal with rest homes, both public and private hospitals and fertility clinics. And there are some other provider lists in there that may be geocoded as well. But what you can get out of this is this lovely interactive leaflet map, a nice little filter by district health boards. But this section in here will give you a massive table, which includes latitude, longitude. So you can pull this entire data set out and do with as you want. The other section on here will be in this health statistics and publications. I myself am not too familiar with this. It does take a bit of digging around, I think, to find a table that has boundary information related to it. A lot of it is national centric, I think. But the kind folks at Ministry of Health are usually pretty good at pointing you in the right direction. So if you do get stuck, don't be afraid to reach out. That goes for most of the social sector agencies, actually, all a pretty friendly, helpful bunch. Yeah.
Cool.
Next up on our list is a very well presented website about education data. And this one here has a whole raft of really, really cool data sets in there. Most of my experience has been with this New Zealand schools data set, where you can download the full directory of geocoded schools across New Zealand with a whole bunch of great information about the school type, who's running it, the cost associated with it. I've seen this data set popped up everywhere from Trade Me in the residential properties section to some of the more fun stuff that Detective New Zealand do as well. There is a data services link here, which you can pull up the school enrollment zones in there. It is, funnily enough, still a map info format, which could be a bit of a challenge for some people to deal with.
A bit dated, yeah. I think it's when you're using Arctis Online, you can actually, I think someone has updated, got the most recent data set in there.
Some people will have done the hard work for you already. Yeah.
For those of you not familiar with NZMG, that's the previous projection, so it won't line up naturally with NZTM. You'll need to be aware of that and transform it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of lovely stuff up here, which I'll leave you guys to have a fun play around with. I think
with those directories in the past, and they may have changed it now, but I know particularly with multi-medium schools and that, when you grab the data, you need to, when you're processing it, just look for any non-text based characters in the headings. Sometimes if you've got a macron in there, they won't necessarily join with other data sets as well, or other random things. So the data in the table itself is fine, but just check the headings for brackets and things. Sometimes it's useful or necessary to remove them.
I have previously put the effort into building an Excel macro that will clean up the header of a table to remove stuff like dashes, parentheses, brackets, and macrons out of it as well, which is a shame. You do lose, I guess, some of the cultural meaning out of it, but the GIS software ain't up to the task. You got to do what you got to do. Yes, that's the Ministry of Education data right here, which is pretty fantastic. And then down to some of my favorite data sets. I find both of these equally fascinating, each in their own way. So a bit of background history for both the New Zealand Deprivation Index and this index of multiple deprivation dataset we'll look at next. Basically, both the University of Otago and the University of Auckland, I believe, were looking at how we could model deprivation, specifically socioeconomic, I believe, across New Zealand. And this gives you a real nice view of the areas that are most deprived versus areas that are reasonably well off, using a bunch of specific indicators.
I think we all always struggle to phrase it politely, but I'll be crass and just say it's basically wealthy versus not wealthy.
Fundamentally, yeah. It does include a bunch of different metrics. Both of them kind of deal with stuff like employment and income for households, down to like accessibility to your GPs, your hospitals. So you'll find that a lot of rural areas will kind of gravitate more towards that lower deprivation, or higher deprivation rather. But at the bottom of this particular link that we provided you is the list or tables rather of both the Deprivation Index for 2018 and 2013 and 2006. And it just keeps going. It's quite a well-established deprivation index, this one.
It's interesting to be able to look at change over time, but the other thing to remember is with all statistical data, it doesn't matter that the mesh blocks change. It's, your mesh block or area units, statistical areas now, they have to change every year. So there are ways and means that you can do direct comparisons as well, but yeah, it's really useful to be able to have this kind of standard cut of data year, period on census on census.
Census on
5
census,
years.
yeah. Yeah, that's another really good point, in that a lot of people will get tripped up by the Statistics New Zealand geography is not quite lining up with the information that you've downloaded from another government agency. And you'll find that different government agencies have not fully adopted the statistic geographies, the ones that are currently in play, and some of them will prefer to stick with a slightly older one. MSD, for example, will provide information at an area unit level. At the moment, both 2013 and 2017 area units, so we're not quite up to scratch with statistical areas yet. And a lot of that's just due to how some of the information is stored in the background. It's a work in progress for a lot of government agencies, I think. Do you want to bring up a map of the Deprivation Index?
Yeah, actually that, I'll just...
there might be a link on here
I've
too.
got this one from Monarchy is probably the simplest one. Let me just...
Still the screen.
I'll just, actually, I'll just find it first. Here we go, this one. And I'll just swipe your screen. So yeah, this is heavily dependent on deprivation as an indicator. So if we pick on Lower Hutt, for example, here you've got more deprived and then least deprived. From personal experience, I know that the average house price in this area here is $1 million. And the average area price in this area is 500, with a lot of Housing New Zealand properties in this area. So, in terms of my personal experience, this does replicate, my perception of areas of least deprived and most deprived. Over the something that we did, I'll just see if I can zoom out a fraction in my browser. What we did is we used that as a way to display information by ethnicity as well as other factors. So with this map, when you zoom around and zoom in, you can see some of the social services also appearing on this map. Zoom into this area, you can see that within this area on display, the total the usual resident population is there, the number of households, the number with internet access, the number of Māori identifying as Māori, and the number identifying as Pacific. So it was quite interesting for me living just there that this reflects my experience as well, is that some of our neighbours are Māoris and a large number of our neighbours are Pacific as well. When you come through here, you can see the number by ethnicity, or that I've identified as ethnicity, Pacific peoples, and other different ethnicities as well. And so that changes, and you get quite a different picture when you come down to the more wealthy areas of town. And you can see it flips around the other way. And so these 10 deciles slice and dice the population into these 10 equal areas. Although note, when you zoom all the way out, the graph isn't flat as I would have expected. I'm sure there's a reason for that, but it doesn't matter just now. There's also other factors from the census. So this is based on that data from NZ.stats that we looked at earlier. And so I think this is pretty sure this is based on SA1. SA1 areas, SA1. Which we kind of, for simple terms, we call the Neighbourhood Demographics Explorer. And you can also filter different fields and things as well. And this is just a starting point. The other area, for example, if we go to Manerewa, see if the zoom's going to work. Here we go. This is another area well familiar with. I grew up near South Auckland. So you see these contrasts again between South Auckland and those more wealthy suburbs up here, but then you've got a large Māori and Pacific population in this area as well. So yeah, it's just fascinating going through and looking at what happens when you pan and zoom and look around. But also the key thing here was to make it very accessible for people who are locked at home, trying to provide social services. If you imagine trying to do your work from home and not being able to drive around or go out and find a service in those areas, it can be quite frustrating. So anyway, back to you, Sam.
Thank you. So it's always cool to see the Deprivation Index in play. But we definitely can't mention the Deprivation Index without also mentioning the Index of Multiple Deprivation.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is out of the University of Auckland. And this is...
Oh, have you just share your screen there, Sam?
Yeah, I keep forgetting.
There's a neat picture on there. I don't know if you're thinking to show it, but there's a really neat...
Here we go.
You know the graphic that they have that describes how it's somewhere on that main page.
This one here?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
I've used that heaps because it's just such a clear conceptualization of what it is.
Absolutely. So you can see this whole reference to employment, income, housing, access, all these other things. And this really explains, I guess, how that index is created, which is, as far as creating an index goes, really accessible. But again, really similar approach of kind of mixing different types of information, presenting it spatially. The difference between the two of them, from my experience, has been the Deprivation Index uses statistic geographies, whereas Index of Multiple Deprivation, I think, typically doesn't. It's creating its own geographic areas to present the information. And what does happen there is you end up with, I guess, a slightly higher resolution. So down to that kind of block by block almost information. But when you are trying to join other like statistic information onto the Deprivation Index, it's a bit challenging to do it with this one.
Do they use the IDI in this one? I think they use IDI.
So I believe the team here were using IDI to pull this information out, which is how they were able to go down to, I think, a mesh block and potentially lower level, and then bring that back up to something that made sense for them. I mean, you can get a GIS shapefile straight out of this one, which is great. You can also pull out a spreadsheet out of it. So yeah, shout out to the team that did this. It's real cool work. Yeah. So those are the two deprivation indexes. Yeah. Cool. And the last one we've got to cover is the data.gov. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I can jump on that one. So just a shout out to Daniel and co. I see you guys on there. Nice to have you in there, Tim. What am I doing?
Good work, guys.
Yeah, I reckon. Okay, so data.gov. This is the mother of all directories. So if you've not come across this one before, what this is different to Google. So with Google, you've kind of got to have an idea of what you're looking for, and then you search for related terms. But the key thing with this is the word discover. And so if we're looking for social services, we're looking in data sets, and we can see here straight away, we don't have to look at Google, we don't have to filter the stuff. We know we're right down to 47 data sets about social services. So here's all kinds of interesting stuff. We can filter by, for me, looking at this, seeing Esri REST, GeoJSON, CSV, KML, that straight away tells me that's a GIS enabled data set. So I can decide within a fraction of a second of having seen how many little boxes are on there that this is data is going to be useful or not, compared to a PDF of those guys, which I don't have much interest in at this point. But in this one here, I can interpret, and I can see there's a Excel file. Let's have a look. Social services, what was that one called, Sam? Directory?
The family services.
Family services, that's the one. Family services. So this is an example. I know there's heaps of work gone into the background of these things. Family services directory. Look at that beautiful little CSV icon there. So I just click on that and I go once on here. So here's those individual files.
Yeah.
I think it's this one. This name looks very familiar. DIA. Yep. So there we go. And it's the whole thing ready to use. Grab it, use it, and you can even look at this pretty fancy looking map here. You can get a preview.
Subselection.
23,884 records.
Yeah.
All ready to go. I'm not flash enough to be able to go and do these kind of GeoJSON type queries and API stuff, but if it's a REST, give me the link and I'll add it to my map. Sweet, off we go. But I know that there are fancy dudes that can manipulate GeoJSON queries and that. But yeah, that's the one I was meaning before. But just to very quickly look through this. So let's say we're looking for police data, and so here we can see this just is so easy to use compared to trying to interpret through Google searches. Key things to be aware of over on the left hand side here is I don't use the map so much because generally the data sets are huge anyway. But you can see here there are different providers. So it must be independent police conduct authorities. So who knows, those guys putting data out there, sweet. So there's different groups, tags. This is, for me, the really interesting stuff from a GIS perspective is CSV tells me there's data, KML, yeah, and if I really had to. But Esri REST, that means I know I'm going to be able to add that into my ArcGIS Online maps. GeoJSON, if I was into that stuff, but I personally haven't used it that much. HTML, now PDF, now zip. Okay, maybe that would be interesting. Let's click on that and see what's in there. Police stations in the Wellington region.
How good.
Yeah. And other things like that. So I can go through and I can query. And if you've been in the resilience session webinar that we had last year, there are also additional categories. For example, you can filter by resilience data sets as well, or ones of relevant to that. But yeah, if you think of a keyword, you just put it in there. What's another one, Sam? Māori, IRD. Interest, what's IRD got in here? Look at this, wage and salary, something or other. CSV there. If we go in here, Māori. And that neat little macron tool, if you saw that, easy macrons, fantastic. So here we go, we can look up Māori data sets, or ones that use the word Māori in there. Spatial land data set, I was just talking about that one this morning. So yeah, and you can also, if you can't find it, you can request it, and they're pretty responsive team as well.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
Now, what else do we have on our list of goodies there? See?
That is the motherload. I think that is all the links that we had in mind.
So the reason I put Manaki Promise there was that was a lot of my work for about 4 months of last year. And so what I was doing is I was calling, say, hey Sam, what data have you guys got? Can you just give it? And Sam would tell me where I could find it, or where I could download it, or get it sorted for me for all kinds of things. So what we did is we set up this Manaki Promise website, and I provided the technical support and a whole bunch of other folks up with all kinds of other stuff. But part of that, and this was also shout out to Eagle, who helped with and Esri, who provided the software at no cost for a good 6 months worth, which was massive, just made it all possible. Worked with stats and all kinds of other folks there as well, and added in a whole bunch of data sets. And these were, the random data sets that people were desperately after, like, where can we go and get some money out for, this client that we're working with. And of course the supermarkets and the pharmacies and other kind of
the essential services.
Services, yeah, they were huge during that level 4 lockdown. That was, what are we now? 11 months later, we kind of forget about that to some degree, how lucky we are here. But so there's a bunch of data there from FENS as well. The localities data, which is now available on, if we just quick plug here for LINZ.
Do love the localities data. So glad that's
localities. We're all after that for years and years and years. Localities. And it is a little tricky to use because there's some table relates. But for example, if we take that off now, turn that on, there we go. Localities, a nice proxy for suburbs. Key thing is to call them localities, not suburbs. Cool. Okay, so I think that is